This next gentleman, Sisto, is from the White Mountain Apache Tribe livestock leader.
No,
Livestock,
I'm range management specialist for our reservation.
did you get that? Okay, long term.
So,
Welcome, Sisto.
all right. Hello, Sisto Hernandez. I'm range management specialist for the White Mountain Apache Tribe. I'm also a tribal member there. There's going to be a lot of eyes in this, I guess. I'm a member of one of our 9 livestock associations, as well as I guide elk hunts on our reservation. And I was selected by our tribal council to be our representative on this Mexican Wolf Livestock Council. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. The Mexican Wolf Livestock Council was established with the help of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in 2011, and it consists of 11 ranchers, 2 wolf advocacy groups, 2 tribes, and varying number of county coalitions in Arizona and New Mexico. Oh yes, we're not just in Arizona, it's within the whole Mexican wolf recovery area, so it includes Arizona and New Mexico. What people were after was, as the slide says, a grassroots effort to develop some type of solution for ranchers in the Mexican wolf recovery area to be able to coexist with wolves. And again, as it says, to overcome that nothing works mentality. We developed this coexistence plan that's a payment for presence. What we did was we looked at different strategies from not just here in North America, but from around the world, from land and I guess it'd be livestock and wildlife managers in like Africa and Europe and Asia. And one of the things that really stuck was something we found from, where was it? The northern European countries where, again, I guess wolves have been reintroduced, and a lot of those ranchers up there, they raise reindeer. They don't raise cattle. And those reindeer herders were encountering a lot of the challenges that livestock producers here in the Southwest are also encountering. So that's what we charged after. And what our plan is based on acknowledging that with a healthy Western landscape, we need to have not only viable wolf populations, but we need to have viable livestock operations also, because something that many people don't understand is raising cattle, being a Western person out here, this isn't our job. It's not like Ace closes so I can go work at Home Depot now. It's not that. This is our culture, regardless of where we come from, whether we're Hispanics, whether we're of European descent, whether we're natives. This is who we are, and this is what we've done for, there's some families, even European families, or people of European descent here that have been ranchers in this part of the country for hundreds of years now. And it is our culture. So it's not like, as I said earlier, it's not like, oh well, Burger King shut down, I'm going to go work at McDonald's now. It's that is not the way it is. So, that being said, or acknowledging that was our goal, to achieve that healthy Western landscapes with both of those, viable wolf populations and viable ranching. Initially, what we went after, the first thing we tried to tackle was to have a depredation compensation program for, I don't know how to say it, like an interim program, because we didn't want that to be just, we didn't want to be just continuing what groups like Defenders of Wildlife have been doing and finding it wasn't really working. I mean, it helps. Certainly it helps the rancher, but that depredation compensation in and of itself doesn't, I mean, it's a little bitty Band-Aid for a, I don't know, I don't want to call it problem right now, so I'll say for just a situation that is encompassing more than just can be covered by that one little Band-Aid. In 2013, the first year we were instituting this, we paid out $24,000 in depredation compensation. And considering the size of the area, and as the gentleman before said, ranchers before wolf reintroduction in this area didn't experience that much loss just naturally. And with as large as ranches are in this part of the country, with as rough as ranches, the rugged terrain of ranches in this part of the country, as many of you can see just coming down from Flagstaff to here in Sedona, that's pretty rough country. It's like that straight across that Mogollon Rim. It's like that into New Mexico, dropping off the Black River drainage, the Salt River drainage, and as I understand from some of my friends, on this side of the state, this western Arizona, there's some of the places that are completely inaccessible other than being horseback or on foot. So where I was going with that is there's a lot of those things that you can't account for. In the past, you may have had an 80, 85% calving rate, and now all of a sudden, you know those cows were bred, but you're only having like 50 or 60% of these babies show up throughout the year. So with understanding that there are those type of things that can't really be documented, you know it wasn't like that before, you know it's different now, but with how big the ranches are, we don't see our cows every day. We had to do something different. So to move away from that depredation compensation, what we completed was, where is this? Okay. Those were the three things. Depredation compensation. We wanted to provide funding for conflict avoidance for ranchers. And then lastly, and the main thing was the payments for presence. And that's the acknowledging that you have increased management costs as well as other losses that you can't document. There it is. So that's what the payments for presence was for, was to recognize the increased costs, the decreases in gain, losses in reproductive efficiency also. Money is allocated with among the occupants based on the formula that the group, our collaborative group, put together, and points are awarded for whether or not the ranch is in a wolf territory. And these things I'll show you a map later and explain more what the differences are between these things. Whether or not the ranch is in a wolf territory, whether or not the wolf core area occurs on the ranch, how many puppies survive to December, as well as the number of cattle that are on the ranch, and whether or not the rancher has been already employing proactive non-lethal measures for interacting with wolves. And on the first year we did this, we received 27 applicants from both Arizona and New Mexico. Whoops. And so, I'll step away also. What a wolf territory is, you guys can see all the different colored blobs. Those are wolf territory. Those are where throughout the year the wolves may range anywhere within this, or at least they track them within these areas. A core area will be like these cross-hatched areas, and that's where for 50% of the year, that's where those wolves spend their time. So if your ranch is, let's say, here, and you have, not only do you have 2 territories on your ranch, but you have 2 core areas, probably 2 den sites, whatever amount of puppies that those individuals are having to take care of. So that impacts you. And like I said earlier, it's not just a job. These are things where your family's involved. Most of us here, we don't hire employees. We don't, some of us do. We may have day workers, we may have cowboys that work for us, but more often than not, I'll use one of my friends that's got a place over here in Portis Junction. When we brand over there, it's his dad, his mom, his sister, him, me, and his brother. That's who works there. We're the people who are involved. And like in the last presentation, yeah, we're realistic about where our food comes from. We know that we're raising these animals to become food for someone else later, but that doesn't mean that you don't call that the number 1426 cow bossy, because she is. You know, that doesn't mean that you don't know all these animals, that you don't see them every day, or I should say we may not see them every day, but when we do gather, we do see them. They are parts of our families also. We don't, like I said, we may be realistic about where our food comes from, but we still have relationships with these animals. And we need to be able to help those ranchers. I mean, just help ease that, as well as help them be able to take care of their families in these areas, because that's what it is. Very few, if any, ranches here in Arizona or New Mexico are like the big conglomerate. Thank you. They're not the big conglomerate like ranches or farms that you may see when you get back into the east, onto the Great Plains, and certainly across the Mississippi. They're all families here, and we just needed to do the best we could to help them to stay on the ground. And in many of these places, they help contribute to the wildlife. There's some of these, I mean, I can't speak specifically for places in New Mexico, maybe other parts in Arizona, but on the reservation, maintain water sources. You maintain, well, actually, that's the biggest limiting factor is water sources. Say on my reservation here, where we had the Rodeo Chetasky fire, the second largest fire in Arizona, New Mexico history. Following that fire, because of the runoff, because of the impacts associated with that catastrophic wildfire, many of the springs went away. Many of the other man-made water developments went away. There's many of the intermittent or ephemeral streams that you can't quite rely on anymore because of the effects of that wildfire. And even now, when was that, 2002? 15 years later, we still deal with those things. But because there are ranchers on the landscape, because there are ranchers there that are helping take care of a spring, helping take care of a dirt tank, helping to do those things, we're able to keep more of that habitat open for other species of wildlife. And then in the case of, maybe not necessarily in the case of wolves, but with other species, they may not be able to exist after that, like say something like that terracotta frog or others. Kind of got off course a little bit, but those are, well, that was the plan. Here's an example of how we calculate things where, as I said earlier, we take into account, let's just use these top three right here, this rancher number 1, 2, and 3, where there's core areas, number of territories, number of wolf pups, did the rancher use conflict avoidance measures, and the number of livestock. So we're saying that this guy has 300 mother cows, or these 3 ranchers, this example, each rancher has 300 mother cows on their ranch. Or no, let's just call them yearlings because it's 300. 300 yearlings. This rancher number 1 was in the territory, but there's no core area and no pups survived. So after everything is multiplied out and that the money available is divided, let's say that rancher receives that $1,100, as opposed to this rancher here who has a core area, who has territories, who had pups survive, who did employ conflict avoidance measures, and so then he gets that little more of incentive to continue on with those conflict avoidance measures, to continue to do the best he can or she can within the wolf recovery area to keep their ranch going and to be, I mean, maybe they're never going to accept wolves. Maybe it's like this gentleman said, where it's going to be I don't like them, I don't want them here, but they're here, and I have to learn to live with them. And if there's some people, they may see that as a negative thing, but knowing how Western people are, if this rancher's like, all right, I mean, if I can learn to live with them, I'm gonna learn to live with them, then that's an accomplishment, and we see that as something good. So, we did talk a lot earlier, and I think that where we're leaving this right here is a pretty good example of where we are with the program, and it's still in its infancy. It's still taking baby steps. It's been a while, as you've seen from the earlier dates as we're going, but it's tough. Just like as you said earlier, when you say that, it was like 1970 something when things began. Yeah. So, and it's kind of like us. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. I mean, we know that there are other effective, there have been other effective programs like the Blackfoot Challenge elsewhere in the country or elsewhere in the world, but there are things here in this arid Southwest that are very, very different, and we can draw from them other things, but it's still a process, and we're still learning, and I think that things are going well. I mean, as with, like say, just recently, Arizona passed their, that state bill, what is it, 1466?
The livestock loss board.
That livestock loss board. That's good. And if Arizona can learn from some of the steps we've taken and create something specific for the state, then that's great. We don't want to see that as a rivalry or anything. If we can work with them, if we can, I don't know, maybe even come together and work together with others, with advocacy groups as well as ranchers, and make something successful, then that's our goal. So like the first slide said, so that we can keep our western landscapes here with wolves on the land and with ranchers on the land also. And I think I'll just leave it right there.
Where did that money come from?
On to that real quick. This came from the grant from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That was the Wolf Livestock Demonstration Grant. And with how large this area is, it's difficult to spread it out and to make sure that things are applied. I mean, hence the formula, but that's where that came from. And as we build in the future, if there are groups such as yours that would like to help us, or if you see good things in what we're doing, if you have suggestions to help us make things better, then we're open to all